I've been thinking about my grandfather a lot the last couple of weeks. And it's partly because of this arts festival. And when I think of him, my feelings have been conflicted because he would love this. He would love what's going on out there with different demonstrations, with the pottery and the egg painting and the jurymen. He would love the silent auction. He would love the art that's on display. And I hope he would love hearing me. But if he were alive, he would not be here. Because he did not like the Episcopal Church. He didn't have anything against it per se, but he was a Baptist for 93 years and quite content to stay one. Not that anyone tried to make him convert, but when Mom or I would invite him here when something special was happening, the animal blessing, a special musical concert, whatever, he would come the first couple of times, and he did his best, but he didn't enjoy himself. And he finally told my mother, the next time she asked him if he wanted to come to church for such and such, he said, no. He said, I don't like that funny little church. I wouldn't be caught dead in that funny little church. So he was a little worried when he was moved up here permanently, because he was going to be living at Episcopal Place, independent living apartments, and he was convinced that he could not live there unless he joined the Episcopal Church. And he was very happy when he found out that was not the case. It's sponsored, it's subsidized by the Episcopal Church, but you can be any religion you want, or no religion at all as far as that goes. And in fact, there was a bus that came from Southside Baptist Church every Sunday morning to Episcopal Place that picked up Papa and several other residents and took them to church every week. And it was just great, because he didn't have to come to this funny little church anymore. My grandfather, as I said, would enjoy an arts festival because he was a prolific artist, extremely talented. It makes me sick how talented he is, because I'm not. He is from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So fine when you get down to it. The Old Salem Museum in Winston-Salem, many years ago, commissioned my grandfather to paint a mural depicting the Moravians coming down Pilot Mountain to settle in Old Salem a million years ago. And that painting, that mural, is still there in that museum today. It was painted by Dan Fox, my grandfather. Papa was convinced that painting, drawing, art of any kind was not a talent you were born with, but a skill that could be learned, and that anyone could learn it, even me. So in 1998, he kept insisting I meet him at Episcopal Place every Saturday morning for our art lesson. And I put him off as long as I could, but he would not give up. And finally I said, fine, let's give it a go. I picked up some canvas sketch pads. Instead of paper, it's lightweight canvas on each page. Picked up one for each of us, a couple of tabletop easels. He had a huge easel, but that's not what we needed for our little lessons. And I showed up at his apartment, where he had a third tabletop easel on the dining room table, and his box of soft pastels, which I called chalk. He had been collecting these pastels for some 50 years, and some were this big, and some were this big, and they were all high-quality stuff. And on the easel on the table, there was nothing on it at the time, but there was a big pile of calendars. There must have been 6 years' worth of calendars. And this calendar was the lighthouse calendar, every month a different lighthouse. And this was the garden calendar, every month a different garden. And here's the puppies and the kittens and the waterfalls and the mountains and the sunsets. He saved them for the photographs. And he spread them all out, and he said to me, pick which one you want to draw today. I looked for the one I thought would be the easiest. So there were no puppies or kittens, nothing that was ever Some says, no, no, no. And finally, I found a calendar. The September, maybe the October month was a photograph of a riverbank with the different trees and different stages of fall foliage. This one had bright reds and oranges and yellows and still some green here and some brown. Just a bunch of trees along the riverbank. That's what we did. He flipped the calendar over, so just a photograph for showing. He put it on the easel, and each of us set to work drawing what we saw. And a couple of hours later, actually, I was done in like 30 minutes. It took him 2 hours. And he held up his. It was gorgeous. And I'm not going to say that it was photorealistic, but it was absolutely stunning. And then I held up mine that would not pass as a paint by number. And I said, see, you can't teach me. I have no talent. I'm terrible at this. He said, that is not true. This is your first time. So that's very good. He said, look at the tree. You must have drawn 800 individual yellow leaves on that tree. And 400 red leaves on this bush. And every single rock and pebble. You didn't miss a one. He didn't draw individual anything, but his looked like the real deal. And then he looked at my clouds and looked at these big fluffy cotton balls in the sky. He said, they're really good fluffy cotton balls, but they're not very good clouds. And I said, that's what I'm trying to tell you. He says, that's because you didn't draw clouds. You drew cotton balls. I said, I drew what I knew how to draw. He said, no, no, no. And he took that calendar down and he started shuffling all the other calendars, and he found one with a big cardboard back, and he tore off that back, and he went to the kitchen, and he took a steak knife, and he poked a hole randomly in this cardboard, so that there was a hole maybe the size of a nickel, maybe a quarter, and then he flipped through more calendars, and he flipped around, until he found the picture he liked, and he took the cardboard and covered the photograph, so that all that was exposed was that one little nickel-sized circle. And he said to me, what do you see? I said, I don't know what that is. I can only see an inch of it. He said, I did not ask you what it is. I asked you, what do you see? I looked at it and said, well, there's some gray and a little purple and some black and something that I would call smoky, maybe ash. That's what I see. And he took the cardboard away to show me the exact same picture we had been drawing all morning long. In fact, what that circle was exposing was one of my clouds. And he said to me, when you told me what you saw, I did not hear you say the word white once. And look at these big fluffy white cotton balls. He said, you need to stop drawing what you know a cloud looks like. Don't do that. Let go of what you know. And take hold of what you see. I said, you think you're pretty clever, don't you? He said, reasonably so, but it's wisdom gained after 90-some-odd years. The next time I went to his house for our art lesson, I tried to draw what I saw instead of what I knew, and it's hard. I don't know if you've ever tried it. It's very hard. When you're drawing an apple, you know it's an apple. You can't not know it's an apple, so you're going to draw an apple, unless you're me. If you're me, you draw a red Christmas ornament. The next week was peaches. And when I started drawing my pink Christmas ornaments, I stopped and said, Bob, it's not a peach. That's a squiggly line. That's some red that kind of zigzags into some yellow with some orange at the bottom, and that's another kind of figure eight, Essie looking thing. And when I did that, first of all, I didn't take just 20 minutes. It took me a good 2 hours. And when I was finished, peaches. You could have grabbed one of those peaches and eaten it. It was a peach. I was shocked. Our art lessons continued every week, but that's not sandwich shop at 5 Points? Anyone?
What? Gore.
Gory's. Thank you, Sarah. It's not there now. I don't even know what it is. But it used to be an ice cream sandwich shop. And I took Papa there one day for lunch. And it was a small little cafe. It was cramped and crowded. The tables very close together. And he and I are sitting at this table, enjoying our sandwich. And at the next table is another guy eating by himself. This was a big man. He was tall. He was broad. He had a big biker beard and long hair and tattoos and piercings and I think a chain on his belt. He was a scary-looking man, but he was just sitting there eating his sandwich. Well, Papa was incredibly deaf. And like a lot of deaf people, because he couldn't hear you, he thought you couldn't hear him unless he screamed. So we're eating our lunch, and he happens to glance around, and he sees this guy, and he does a double take, and he says to me, "Hey, do you see that man right there?" Well, everybody's looking at that man right there. I said, "Shush, shush, shush, I see him, shh, I see him." He says, "Do you reckon he's queer?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know. Here is what I reckon. I reckon if he wants to be fully occupied while he beats us to death, he will need to decide what to do with his left hand." And then the big biker guy looked at me and he kind of smiled and he said, "Don't worry about it, man. I got a grandpa too." For which I was very grateful. As we were driving home to Episcopal Place, I said to Papa, "Were you trying to get us killed?" He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Why did you ask if the man was queer?" He says, "Well, you saw what he looked like." I said, "And?" "Well, everybody knows that's what queers look like. They look like sissies, or they look like the M&Ms. I said, "What are you talking about, either sissies or M&Ms? By the way, I'm gay." I said, "Me, which one am I, a sissy or an M&M? He said, "Don't be silly, you're neither one, you're just Bob." I said, "Okay, what about my brother Joe and his husband? Which one are they, M&Ms or sissies?" He says, "Joe is perfectly fine and Glenn looks okay too." I said, "What about the volunteer at Episcopal Place that you play checkers with every single week? Is he the sissy or is he into the M&M?" He says, "Larry's a fine man. Don't say anything bad about Larry." I said, "Papa, you tell me what you know about gay people, but every gay person you know is nothing at all like that. You need to let go of what you know. Take hold of what you see. Because I'm tired of you parading all these cotton balls by me and trying to pass them off as clowns." He said, "You think you're pretty clever, don't you?" I said, "Reasonably so, but it's wisdom I learned at my grandfather's knee." But he didn't hear me say that because he had already turned off his hearing aid and retired from the conversation. The Saturday before Easter, I went to Episcopal Place for our weekly art lesson, and the door was locked. Usually he kept it open for me because he knew I was coming, but today it was locked. And I knocked on the door, and instead of coming to answer, I could hear him very faintly calling for help. The night before, he had gone to the kitchen for something, and he had fallen down. And I know it sounds like I'm making fun of that commercial, but he'd fallen down and he couldn't get up. So he spent all night long in his underwear on the kitchen floor. And he still couldn't get up. So I called the paramedics, and they came to Episcopal Place, and they got a pass key, because it's not unusual for them to be called to Episcopal Place. And they went in, and they got Papa off the floor, which was a chore. He was in some serious pain. He said, "I'm not going to the hospital." He flat refused. But he did let them help him get dressed and put him into his recliner. And then he told them they could go. He was done there. So they left. I said, "Papa, you've got to go to the hospital. You can't get out of that chair." He said, "I'm perfectly fine in this chair." I said, "What are you going to eat?" He said, sandwich right here. I said, and when that's gone, he said, you'll bring me another one. I said, when do you have to go to the bathroom? He said, I've got an empty soda bottle right here. I said, it's going to get full eventually. You've got to go to the hospital. And his voice kind of broke, and he said, I'm afraid if I go to the hospital, I will never be able to come back here. And he was right. We took him to the hospital, and they kept him there and did what they could for him for, oh goodness, a couple of weeks. But he was no longer able to live independently, which is a qualification for living at an independent living facility. So when he left the hospital, he had to go into a nursing home. And it just killed him. That was his worst nightmare. And he just gave up. He wasn't himself anymore. When I would go to visit him, he was disinterested and listless and just there. Now, at this time, I worked for Bell South downtown, the big building. I was on the 26th floor. My mother worked in the same building on the 24th floor. And once every 2 or 3 weeks, I would get a phone call at my desk from the nursing home, from one of the nurses. Mr. Bird, we've had to take Mr. Fox down the hill to the emergency room. And I'm letting you know. And then I would go down to the 24th floor, and Mom and I would drive down to the hospital, show me something, I don't know. And we would sit with Papa on the air. They'd never admit it. They'd give him stable and send him back up the hill to the nursing home. Once a month, twice a month this happened. Excuse me. One day at my desk, I got a phone call from the nursing home. And they said, Mr. Bird, Mr. Fox has expired. All I could think of was a carton of milk with the date printed on the top. I didn't know what she meant. I said, he did what? She said, he's expired. I said, how do you know? Did you sniff him? She said, you don't understand. He's passed. I'm still thinking expiration date. I said, was he supposed to do it last week? And then it hit me what she had just told me. My grandfather had died. And much worse than that, my mother's father had died. And I had to go down to the 24th floor and tell her so. It wasn't a big surprise. We weren't shocked. But that didn't keep it from being a sad, sad thing, especially for Mom. This was her dad. We drove to the nursing home, and Papa was in bed, and he looked better than he had every other time we visited. They really had him looking nice. I know that sounds terribly cliche. And we sat there for a while, and then we went to the funeral home. Well, Papa was a practical man. He had already arranged everything for his funeral. It was already paid for. He was going to be cremated, that's it. And he wanted his ashes scattered on Pilot Mountain in North Carolina. Mom and I drove to the funeral home where these arrangements had been made. And we met with the man there and told him, okay, Mr. Fox has died now, but we're here to do what we need to do, but we don't know what that is. Now, a friend of mine used to work in the funeral industry, and he was an admirable man and an upright man and concerned only with the needs of the bereaved. We did not have him. This clown that we had said to us, well, what kind of coffin do you need? I said, I don't think we need any at all. He's going to be cremated, not buried. He said, well, yes, but in Alabama, the law is he must be in a coffin. I said, oh, well, I think he already prepaid for one, that $200 pound box. And he said, $200 pound box. And he looked at my mother. He knew where his bread was buttered. He said, Ms. Bird, didn't you love your daddy? And Mom's bottom lip started to quiver. And she turned and said, maybe we need a better coffin. So I said to this guy, let me see the coffins. Well, he shows a catalog in front of me. I mean, it was this thick. And I flipped right to the back. The $7,500 Elvis model. blue suede. I said, this one right here. And he said, yes. I said, do you have the cardboard box that was shipped here in? Because we can use that. And he said, I suppose the pine box will suffice. Now, let's talk about the urn. I said, we don't need an urn. He's not going to be sitting on the fireplace painter. He's going to be scattered over Pilot Mountain. The same mountain he had painted Moravians coming down. And the man said, you just going to dump him out of a box? Miss Bird, didn't you love your daddy? And Mom's lips started to quiver. She turned and said, maybe we need an urn. Well, at this stage of my life, I had expanded beyond the soft pastels and discovered Painted by You, a do-it-yourself pottery studio. Maybe you're familiar with it. And I had been going there every week and had become very friendly with the owner, Amaryllis. So I said to the funeral man, I said, wait one moment, please. And I took out my phone and I called Amaryllis. And she said, Bob, how are you? I said, not good. My grandfather died this morning. She said, I'm terribly sorry to hear that. Can I help? I said, as a matter of fact, you can. I said, in the top shelf, way in the back, last time I was there, you had a cookie jar. Is it still there? Because we need an urn. Because the urns this guy was selling were $350 and up. And Amaryllis says, well, Bob, as a matter of fact, it is. I said, I know you need a week for things to be glazed and fired before they're ready. I said, but the funeral is going to be Saturday. Is there any way it can be ready Friday? This is just 3 days in the future. She said, Bob, of course, and that there's no charge. And then she took it one step further. She said, would you like Brittany, that was the staff artist that Painted by You, would you like Brittany to put your grandfather's name on the urn? I said, that would be lovely. His name is Daniel Fox. And Amaryllis said, I will do it. And it will be ready on Friday. Then I told the man, urn is taken care of. Now he's getting mad. He said, well, let's talk about the funeral chapel. I said, there will not be a need for a funeral chapel. The service is going to be at my grandfather's church at Southside Baptist. Mom said, no, it's not. I said, what do you mean? She said, it's going to be at St. Francis. I said, he wouldn't be caught dead in that funny little church. That's exactly what you're doing to him. And then the funeral man said, well, not really, because we're not going to do the cremation until Sunday, so he won't be there. And Mom said, well, there you go. I said, no, you don't go. Papa did not like the Episcopal Church. Your funeral will be at St. Francis. My funeral will be at St. Francis. His funeral has to be at Southside Baptist Church. Then she got all lofty on me. Funerals are not for the dead. They're for the living. They offer no sustenance to the departed, but they nourish the grieving soul. And then Mama looked at me and smiled. As if everything were settled. As if there was no longer any disagreement. As if we were of one accord. We were not of one accord. We were not even of one civic. There was no accord at all. This was wrong. And I told her so. And she said, well, the bottom line is I'm in charge. This is how we're going to do it. I said, your turn's coming, old woman. And when it does, I'm going to remember your words of wisdom. And you're going to be dead and not needing any sustenance. But I'm going to need to have a nourished soul. Your funeral will be done by a voodoo high priestess under the light of the full moon. And she's going to be wearing Crocs and nothing else. Mom said, my will specifies my directions. Thank you very much. And she smiled. I lost the battle. Papa would be caught dead in this funny little church at his funeral. It was going to take place in this funny little church. Not this room. This room didn't exist at the time. We worshiped in the parish hall. Friday, I went to pick up the urn and discovered that Amaryllis had forgotten to tell Brittany it's an urn, not a cookie jar. She had forgotten to tell Brittany Papa was 93, not 6. The urn, the eye in Daniel was dotted with a heart, and the O in Fox had pointed ears and a little snout. That's the urn. I said, oh my. So I took the urn and brought it to church. It was too late to make other arrangements. Now, I did not know this. Maybe you do, but I did not know this. If you're having a funeral where the deceased is or is going to be cremated, if the cremation has taken place already, regardless of where the ashes are, they can be at the funeral home, they can be in the urn, but if he has already been cremated, the lid is on the urn. If he has yet to be cremated, the urn is present with the lid off. This tells people, yes, he's going to be cremated, but we haven't lit the match yet. I do not know why it matters, but apparently it does. So here we are. During the funeral, I was one of the readers. I was reading the New Testament lesson, which precedes the gospel. I went up to the ambo and I did the reading, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to keep the tears in check. And as I was heading back to my pew, I glanced at the urn and stopped. Why is there an Oreo cookie in the urn? Apparently some child who was now in the nurse was either proving he knew how to share, or thought Papa would be hungry on his journey, or had learned about the ancient pharaohs and their chicken soup they took with them. I don't know, but someone had put a cookie in the urn. And I was confused. Why, Papa doesn't need it. Why is there a cookie in the urn? And, I mean, it started life as a cookie jar, but everyone here knows this is, and then that voice in my head said, Bob, let go of what you know. Take hold of what you see. Well, what I could see was an Oreo cookie. So I took hold of it. And I started back to my pew when I caught my mother's eye. I said, Oreo cookies are not for the dead. They're for the living. They do not nourish the departed soul, but they offer substance to the grieving. And then I looked at my mother and smiled. Thank you.